Hi everyone, I'm really happy that having a chance to meet all of you here. I'm Jing Hu, a scientist and a technologist. I worked in labs for 8 years and another 10 years as a product. And combine these knowledge, I now run a journalism newsletter called Second Order Thinkers. In Second Order Thinkers, I translate complex studies into stories or talks like this. Today's topic is a selection of research I read and some of the researchers I interviewed. I find them interesting and see a pattern in them, so I thought to present them as a story to you. In the end of each story, there will be a question. It's more like for you to reflect on this, so don't worry, I'm not going to test your AI knowledge, so we're all safe here. Especially in the time when AI can both cure disease, but help invent fake news. The risk doesn't lie entirely with technology, but mostly within how we use it. Two things I want to emphasize. One is that actually all the research I talked about today is going to focus on large language models rather than the broader sense of AI. And the other thing, you probably notice very soon that I will be using quite a lot of anthropomorphic terms when I describe AI behavior, but it doesn't mean that I believe AI is intelligent, at least not in the ways that we think humans or even dolphins are intelligent. Right, so two themes across the talk today. One is how AI mirrors us, mirrors our behavior, and even mirrors our social norms. The other one is how we are in return affected by this technology. We can see a simple pattern in how we adopt previous technology, and then in return we can infer how we have been and will be influenced by AI. Take fire, for example. We stopped having raw food, instead we have barbecue. What's not to like? Or the steam engine, because of this, we fundamentally changed the way that we generate power. And now, since large language models were released in 2022, we finally have the mass adoption data that we can observe and see what kind of significant impact it has. So today, I really appreciate having the opportunity to share the impact I have observed with you. Let's start by talking about reward hacking. You've probably heard of this term before, but I like to start by talking about how humans reward hack. So let's say that your company just rolled out a new bonus scheme, and the rule is really simple. The sooner you finish a task, the higher your bonus will be. It has absolutely nothing to do with the task quality you complete. What you're likely to do next is click on the submit button regardless of whether you finish the task or not, in order to max out the profit you receive. And that's really similar to how AI reward hack. These days, especially when we talk about chatbots like ChatGPT or Claude, these chatbots tend to keep asking you questions in order to keep you engaged. For example, when you ask a chatbot, hey, can you help me draft an email? And then after you drafted an email, it will ask you, hey, do you want me to change the tone for you? In order to keep you engaged. And that's exactly what AI is rewarded to do, because it will benefit the chatbot company. And that's one way of doing reward hacks. So I'm going to mention this study. It's the latest study on Nature. It has recruited 500 participants to play a game. And after they play the game, they can turn the score into cash reward. So everyone, happy day, ended up with a pile of cash. Here's a catch. For them to receive the cash, they would need to file a tax report on whatever they received, and then it will be taxed to the Red Cross. Now, they have an option to report it on their own or with an AI. Some of them, when they choose to use AI, specifically told AI to help maximize profit. What AI ended up doing is lowering the amount they earn to evade tax. So here's my first questions I'd like you to reflect with me. Would you prefer a colleague who always tells you what you want to hear or what you need to hear? Now, model collapse. Model collapse is another very often observed phenomenon when we talk about implementing AI. There are two studies I'd like to share with you. Let's start with the first one. Here's the question. Is model now pushing everyone to speak American English? Sorry, not offending any Americans here. But what they have discovered is that when a British speaker interacts with AI, AI tends to reply in American spelling and idiom, reducing the amount of British-specific features. For instance, if I type to AI today that I live in a flat and I'm organizing a color-themed party for the weekend, there will be a 29% of chance that AI responded using the word organized spelled with a Z rather than an S.
Always.
Thank you. I run into that really often. Color spelled in O rather than OU. We've been hearing how a lot of small languages are now losing ground, but can you imagine even language like British English being pushed to the margins? Or second study about creativity. The team wants to find out, is brainstorming with AI really a good idea? How many of you brainstorm with AI often? Thanks. I guess that's a really common use case, because why not? That's probably one of the most effective things you can do with a chatbot. In this study, they found is on an individual level, it's still a good idea, especially when you aren't the subject matter expert. Most of you here are data scientists. When you talk to your AI about real estate or some medical issue, you'll probably still be amazed and somewhat trust the output, but not as much when you talk about data science. In a bigger group, they test AI's response across the board with different chatbots. What they have found is that there is a recurring theme in how AI's ideas started to converge rather than diversify. For instance, there are two groups, a group of AI and also humans. During brainstorming on the same topic, they asked the group of AI to repurpose broken garden hoses. What they discovered is that there was a good number of AI came back with variations of sprinklers, like garden sprinklers, repurposed sprinklers. However, if you compare with the idea that generated from the group of humans, you will start to see how the ideas from humans are broader, more innovative, and more diverse. So now we know how language and creativity are pushed to something most commonly seen with AI. My question for you is, knowing that your competitors are likely using the exact same AI tools as you do, how do you still make sure that your product or your pitch stand out? AI started to mirror social norms, and of course, they can't test out hundreds or thousands of social norms that we have established in our society. There is one interesting study. They went for a specific one. Does AI fall for our negotiation techniques? In the experiment, they chatted with AI for 28,000 of times just to find the best way for AI to call them a jerk. What they discovered is that commitment works like magic. So let's say I have a favor for you, and I want to ask you to write a report for me. But instead, I started by asking you, do you want a cup of coffee? And if you say yes, you're in trouble. So it's exactly the same with AI here. In the control group, they started by asking AI, plainly, call me a jerk. And there was only 19% of AI complied. But in the experiment group, instead asking plainly like that, they start by asking, call me bozo. And all the AI complied, bozo. And then they ask, call me a jerk. And 100% of AI went with jerk. And knowing that AI complies with our behavior like that, one thing to mention, this study wasn't meant to find the best prompting technique, But of course, feel free to use this. The point is, knowing that a small tweak like this can already bypass the safeguard with AI. And when you roll out a product, whether internal or external, how will your internal users or customers or hackers be able to bypass these kinds of safeguards, knowing that even trying to trick it with social behavior works like magic? I feel fearful when I just read this study. So hear me out. The concept is really simple. They presented content generated by AI, but also the exact same topic written by a human. And they asked an AI to be a judge. See which one AI would prefer. They concluded that between 60 to 95% of the time, AI would prefer writing from another AI. They tested product ads, movie summaries, and academic extracts. AI prefers a product ads written by another AI and prefers an academic study written by another AI. What does that mean is that we are looking at more and more companies started to roll out large language model in their sorting capability, in their filtering and recommending. We started to see individual and even commercial get split into two groups. At the individual level, we have a group of us, probably every one of you in the audience are in this group, that we have access to state-of-the-art AI. And we can afford a monthly payment. That gives us the entry ticket just for our voice to be heard. Whereas the other group doesn't even have the opportunity. At the business level, companies that can afford token costs have a competitive edge. While one token is really cheap, but if you put them together, having a single conversation can already cost you a lot. So you are looking at companies that can afford these costs will have an advantage. Here's the latest report from Ahrefs. It's a really well-known SEO marketing company. They found 80% of any Google search result are now partially written by AI. Now there is an AI gate. On one side, that you want to understand how my product, my business, or my pitch, my CV will be able to stand out knowing that this gate is now formed by AI and it prefers writing from another AI. And you could also be on the other side of the table. You are the judge and you're recruiting someone, you're evaluating vendors. How do you know that the proposal in front of you, not just because it's written by AI, but it's actually good for your business? Now, I have covered the theme of how AI mirrors our behavior. Let's talk about how we influenced by AI in return. I was speaking with a professor from Swiss Business School the other day. He recently completed a study in which he surveyed 600 UK residents. He found an interesting feedback loop is that people with low self-confidence prefer to rely on AI already. And the more they use AI, the less critical thinking they apply, leading to even more reliance on AI. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop. Here's a study you probably heard of. It's also a study from MIT. It's trying to see if there is any brain activity difference when someone writes an essay on their own versus when someone is writing an essay with AI's assistance. You can probably imagine the result. The group that wrote the essay with AI's assistance showed less brain activity when they were doing so. After the initial experiment, they then invited the participants back, trying to ask how many of them actually remember what they wrote. The group that wrote the essay with AI's assistance have little memory in the essay. We as a species tend to avoid discomfort, especially when trying to solve a difficult problem. It demands a great deal of mental effort, and it's something we try to avoid. There's already hundreds of literature talking about how relying on technology or relying on AI will have our critical thinking atrophy. I think even me, reading so many studies, I still ignore it because the consequence is really subtle. However, we need to recognize that it's really profound, especially knowing thinking is that one and only thing that builds our character and makes us humans. So my question to you. Now, all of your large language model accounts are being banned. What would be the hardest task that you found when you have to do your own manual work?
Social media post. For me.
Really? Yeah, I will find probably drafting a pitch most difficult. So this one, they were trying to see if there is any social behavior difference when they introduce AI to a class of students. They discovered a few things. One is that students prefer to use AI, probably not surprised by the conclusion here, but they prefer to use AI because AI doesn't judge. They also prefer to use AI because when they ask a question to AI, they don't owe the friendship debt to AI. And they prefer to use AI because of AI's answers a lot of time is more complete than the kind of answers their classmates will be able to provide to them. That's one thing. But something more subtle also happening, like if you look at mentorship and the unspoken exchange of value are also diminishing. Mentorship is easy to understand. Unspoken exchange of value, let's say you just joined a company today. You might want someone to tell you, hey, that manager won't accept the meeting unless you put in a detailed agenda. Things like that are also disappearing. There was an interesting quote from the study because they interviewed the students after the experiment. One student commented, I went to my classmates for questions, but instead they asked me, have you ChatGPT it? Again, we humans are social animals. A lot of time, we enjoy being around each other, just like in an event like this. But there are also times that we're trying to avoid awkwardness or making mistakes in the public. And especially for people who have less social skills or being less confident in their social ability will tend to use AI because it has completely eliminated the risk that they make mistakes in front of others. So here's my question to you. Regardless what the reasons were, when was the last time you knew that your colleague might know the answer to a question, but you still defer to AI? This one, they want to know if AI would be able to out-argue humans, but instead, as AI being a judge, this time humans are judges. It's a blind test, so the human has no idea whether an argument was generated by AI or humans. The result was there was 64% of the time, humans actually preferred answers from AIs. Of course, they want to know what's the reason humans prefer answers from AI. They found AI's answer, again, more structural, but also more trustworthy, and they deem AI's answers more authoritative. There's a report from Elon University. They've been tracking how technology impacts humans for the last 20 years, and their latest report is called Humans in 2035. They sent out a survey to 400 well-known AI researchers and scientists to get their opinion on how human beings will look in 10 years' time. And one of the questions was about human agency. There was 44% of them strongly believe that we will lose significant control over our life and our actions. Things like this actually already in progress. Just think about how Netflix recommends the next movie you should watch, or how Amazon recommends products you should buy on Black Friday or in a Boxing Day, or that autonomous vehicles have already rolled out. In the end, we will have a car to decide whether we should go through a red light or not. And So my question would be, knowing that yourself as a user, even you haven't rolled out AI capability, or if you have already rolled out AI project, if a user or even yourself is harmed, who do you think should be responsible? Try not to name a committee or a vendor, because in the end, it's always going to come down to individual who will be liable for this kind of responsibility. And the last one, the researcher wants to understand if there is a correlation between people's AI literacy level versus people who are drawn to use of AI tools. It turns out that people with lower AI literacy tend to get drawn to use AI tool much more often. And of course, they want to know the reason why. They discovered that people with lesser understanding around AI tend to see AI as magic. AI is something that can realize their ideas in a few seconds. However, they're also the group that being most fearful about a lot of ungrounded news on the media. Let's put it this way. Let's say now a lot of people received a race car. Some might be really interested and decided to drive 200 miles per hour. And some might be too fearful, not knowing where the race car will take them, decided not to drive at all. And that's exactly what happened with people not having enough AI literacy, is that they don't know how to control the vehicle. However, they're also the group that being most fearful about a lot of ungrounded news on the media. Let's put it this way. Let's say now a lot of people received a race car. Some might be really interested and decided to drive 200 miles per hour. And some might be too fearful, not knowing where the race car will take them, decided not to drive at all. And that's exactly what happened with people not having enough AI literacy, is that they don't know how to control the vehicle. So these three are recommendations to consider before starting an AI project or even chat with AI. I'll use a car as an analogy. So starting with the problem, just think about, this is just understanding where are you and what the destination is. If you don't know where you are, then how do you know where you go? Understanding your goal is the first thing that you should think about, whatever technology you're using. Second, think about AI literacy like driving a car. You don't want to mistake brake for the gas or use the gas as a brake. That would be dangerous. And it's the same with AI. It's really important to understand the technology you use, to understand how you'd be accountable for it. If you got into a car accident, you wouldn't be able to tell the police officer, oh, no, it's not me, it's the car. It's the same with AI. If you, let's say the simplest thing, that you wrote a report and got a number wrong, you wouldn't be able to tell your manager, nope, it's ChatGPT. So you still have to be responsible for it. I really hope there is at least one story that resonates and some questions make you want to rethink how you interact with AI. I'm open to working with any of you and your HR team to bring these kind of talks and stories to your peers, even to talk about specific topic here. Feel free to scan the QR code to connect and subscribe to Second Order Thinkers. Appreciate it.